we're going to talk with Alexander McCall Smith. I think, can you hear me and see me?
I can indeed, yes. I can hear you and see you very well, thank you.
Okay, and I think we can hear the audience here too, and if we give him a warm welcome.
Thank you.
It's lovely that you could be with us tonight, and I understand we are seeing you in your home in Edinburgh.
In Scotland, that's right. In Edinburgh, in Scotland, yes. I'm here in my study in my Edinburgh house, and this is where I write my books.
Ah, excellent. I thought before we start talking, I would just give the audience a very short introduction to your work. Alexander McCall Smith, he's a professor emeritus of medical law. He started out as an author already in 1980, but it wasn't until 1998 he published his first crime novel, The _1 Ladies Detective Agency. The first out of so far 21 books about Precious Ramotswe, who runs a private detective agency in Botswana. And in Sweden, we're also very familiar with your Sunday Philosophy Club series, the 16 books about Isabel Dalhousie, set in Edinburgh. And additionally, you have written several other series with and without crimes, and now also this series of Malmö novels about police detective Ulf Varg, who runs the Department of Sensitive Crimes. And the Department of Sensitive Crimes is also the title of the first book in this series, in Swedish translated as Avdelningen för känsliga brott. And in English, this series consists already of 5 books, and a second book, The Talented Mr. Varg, has been translated into Swedish this year. Should really quickly exchange it here, we forgot that. As En man med många talanger. And my first question to you is, of course, why on earth did you decide to write a crime series set in Malmö, Sweden?
Well, thank you, Kirsten, for that introduction. Well, like so many people throughout the world, I've enjoyed Nordic crime, both in fiction form, in novels, but also, I suppose, more commonly, in the form of television series. And as you well know, Kirsten, that this has become really one of the most popular forms of entertainment in the world, really. People watching criminal activities in the Nordic countries. And I don't know whether the Nordic countries really wanted that, but that has happened with these very, very successful, popular television series, The Killing, and various others, set in Sweden, Denmark and Norway, and of course other Scandinavian television series that weren't necessarily associated with crime have become the staple diet. And so there was this great interest certainly in the English-speaking world, in Scandinavian or Nordic crime novels and fiction. And so I thought, well, maybe those of us who write crime books set in various English-speaking countries could have a go at writing something set in Sweden. And it's my books about this detective in the Department of Sensitive Crimes in Malmö are, I'm using Sweden as a backdrop for something which I could set elsewhere, but it's just, there are certain popular conceptions of Sweden that make it rather fun to set this book in that setting.
And in your Malmö novels, we meet Ulf Varg. He is a very unique police detective, and he works in a very unique police unit. For those in the audience here who still haven't met Ulf Varg, could you tell them a little about him?
Well, he's a very sympathetic character. My books are what are described in, I suppose, in North America as cozies. They're books in which we don't really have anything very seriously criminal happening. And so Ulf is a police inspector, but in fact really doesn't deal with anything nasty, nothing unpleasant. So rather unlike most crime novels, where it is absolutely essential that there should be a body, that there should be homicide, we don't have anything remotely like that. There's no violence. Everything is really quirky and odd and unusual. So there we have him. He's, as I say, a sympathetic man. He is unmarried. He used to be married, but no longer. And he has a dog, Martin, who is deaf. He has a hearing impediment, but has been taught to lip read. He's the only dog in Sweden who can lip read. In fact, the only dog in Western Europe who can lip read.
Yeah. In your previous series, at least the ones that we are most familiar with, you work with women protagonists or main characters. How come you decided to have a male detective in your Malmö series?
I don't know why I did that. It just came about. As you say, in my #1 Ladies Detective Agency series, the main protagonists are women, and it's all seen from the women's perspective. Similarly, with my Isabel Dalhousie series set in Scotland, in Edinburgh, we have the same thing. I think I just felt that Ulf came to me. You know, the characters come to you. You're not necessarily looking for them, but they come and tap you on the shoulder, and you realize you've got a character. So he did that.
And Ulf Varg has a colleague named Bloomquist, which, of course, I guess isn't a random choice of name either.
Well, it was actually. I wasn't really I wasn't consciously imitating anyone there. So everybody thinks that I'm making a point with that, but no, not really. I was just looking for a name that I rather like. I like that name, so I put that.
It's clear that you really love the crime genre in many ways, and also the titles of the novels in this series, they allude to or play on other classical crime fiction titles. Can you tell us a little bit about that? We see the Swedish titles, and this the last one, or the most recent one to be translated here, what was the English title again?
The Talented Mr. Varg.
Yes, that. Yes. If you start with that title and maybe say something about one or two of the others.
Yes, well, I think the first title was The Department of Sensitive Crimes, which of course was a descriptive title. And I think that was just playing on the humorous possibilities of having a department which was concerned only with sensitive crimes. Then when we came to the second one, The Talented Mr. Varg, was that, I think, was obviously a play on Patricia Highsmith's The Talented Mr. Ripley. I'm a great fan of Patricia Highsmith. I think that her Ripley novels really are very good, and indeed her other novels are wonderful as well. They're very tense. She's very, very good at portraying psychopathy and the psychopath. And I do like her books. Although recently I read a biography of the late Patricia Highsmith, and it was so negative. It painted a very, very negative picture of her that it rather has spoiled the books for me. It's quite interesting to hear about some of her attitudes. Really made me feel less enthusiastic about her works then. But I used that. The third one in English, which is this one here, has the same sort of design, is The Man with the Silver Tsar. And there we see Ulf's beautiful car. And of course we have a play on wolves in that as well. We always see a wolf because his name, I gather, It means wolf, wolf.
Yeah.
And so, so the man with the silver Saab, the Saab is quite an important a character. And of course, that's an iconic Saab in the days when Saabs still looked like Saabs. And
Yes.
we all loved them. I used to have one a little bit like that. And so we all regret the disappearance of Saabs. So that's homage to Saabs.
Let's see. Yes, we talked a little bit about your fascination for the Nordic crime novels and the Nordic noir, and it's obvious that you read a lot of these more violent novels too. But you quite opposite to Nordic noir. You have, in some context, I thought, called these novels Scandinavian Blanc.
Yes.
As a play on that, and you talked a little bit about what you're not doing in your crime novels, but what do you believe is important when you write a crime or a detective novel?
Well, I think the great thing about the crime novel is that it gives all sorts of possibilities to look into issues of character, psychology, the individual, and what the individual is thinking. It also gives a possibility to dwell on place, the place in which the novel takes place. That's very important. So I think that the crime novel is one of the best vehicles for writing about human nature. And many people take a rather, what we might call, condescending view of the crime novel. They regard the crime novel as not being as important as the literary novel, which I think is quite wrong, because I think crime writing is capable of great depth, it's capable of great psychological acuity, and I feel that there's a great deal to be said for that. And so when I write crime novels, as I say, I write gentle ones. I'm more interested in the psychology and the place than in anything else. So my Isabel Dalhousie novels in Edinburgh, she is a bit of a detective, informal detective, but she's really a philosopher interested in people's relationships, and she deals with problems in people's lives rather than criminal offenses. So there are all sorts of things that you can look at in crime fiction. It has great depth. Crime fiction has great depth, and you can deal, of course, with major philosophical issues of guilt, responsibility, and matters of that sort. And I do in these Ulf novels. Ulf often thinks about issues of responsibility for one's acts, duties to other people, and so on. So they can become, in a way, vehicles for a philosophical discussion.
In your Ulf Varg novels, as in many of the others, we also find a lot of humor. And some things that give rise to humor in the Varg series are the stereotypes about Swedes.
Yes.
I, for example, love how this excessive bureaucracy gives rise to a very difficult system for ordering office materials, or how the Swedish melancholy is expressed in how Ulf Varg's dog is being treated for depression. What are some of your favorite Swedish stereotypes?
Well, I think, in these books, I really am indulging in stereotypes. These issues that you mention, of course, occur in every society. Everybody has a bureaucracy. Everybody has trouble with excessive rules. The interesting thing about Sweden is that when we look at Sweden from outside, the rest of the world looks at Sweden and thinks this is an ideal society. Sweden has always been presented to us as the ideal society, the best of all possible worlds, in a sense. And that's one of the reasons why Swedish crime fiction is of interest to people, because you get the positioning.
It clashes with that image.
Exactly, it clashes with that image. And then, of course, everyone would say the usual issues. I believe that in Sweden there is very strong pressure for consensus. People like to agree, and that's of interest to me. So we get that into the and also, of course, then there's some of the cliches. The popular view that people in Scandinavian countries can get a little bit depressed about the world, and it all becomes like an Ingmar Bergman film where everybody's and so with Ulf, his dog is being treated for depression, which is such a ridiculous thing.
You have published almost, I think, 120 books since 1980, and you're an extremely productive writer. And I understand you write a lot every day. Do you have very strict routines, or what is your secret or your best tips to aspiring writers?
Well, I think it's really important to have a regime, to have a timetable, so to speak. I think it is very important if you are a writer, or if you're beginning to be a writer, to try to write every day, to at least have an hour or so where you sit at the desk. I think the one thing that you must always remember is that the muse will not come and tap you on the shoulder and say, give you the inspiration. So you really have to work at it. So I do have quite a strict program. I get up very early in the morning. I am often up at 3:30 or 4 in the morning, and I'll write for. Well, I do go back to bed. I go back to bed a bit later, so I do get the necessary sleep. But I think that it's very important to write, and I think for the person who is setting out to become a writer, whether a writer of crime fiction or any other form of fiction, I think that practice is so important. I always say to people, write your first book and then immediately start to write the second book, because the second book will be better, but you develop the ability to write with ease in the same way as if you are wanting to play the piano. You have to practice at the piano every day.
Thank you. That's very good advice. And finally, what can you tell us about the future of Ulf Varg here in Sweden? Do you know if we will get to read the other 3 books soon? And are you continuing this series beyond the 5 books?
Yeah, well, I hope so. I hope to write more. I have a very good plot for the next one. I had recently a great friend from Stockholm came over to Scotland and was staying with us for a few days, and I had many discussions with him about what would be a good plot for Ulf in the next.
Great.
So he was of great assistance in that respect, and I've got a very good plot for the next one. So I want to continue with these books because I do so enjoy writing them.
And do you have any idea when we will see the next one in Sweden?
I don't, I'm afraid. No, that is in the...
You have to ask your publisher.
In the hands of the publishers, if not in the hands of the gods.
Oh, well, we don't believe in gods much here in Sweden, but we'll cross our fingers anyway. Well, thank you so much for joining us tonight. Alexander McCall Smith.
Thank you, Kirsten.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.